At 12, I had 18 months to master 5 languages or face a boarding school prison. I exposed the abuse when Dad attacked my 10-year-old brother. After I used a French word instead of Spanish at 7, my mom smacked me across the face so hard I fell off my chair. My parents exclusively spoke English. They thought multilingual people were better and had ruined their lives by speaking only one. Mom cried over films of people switching languages, saying she felt lovely and dumb. Dad got drunk and declared he could have been important if he'd learned languages as a kid instead of working in a warehouse. When my older sister Claire was born, they decided their kids would be different. We spoke a new language every day of the week. Friday was Russian, Monday French, Tuesday German, Wednesday Mandarin, Thursday Arabic. Sunday was review and practice for all, Saturday was Japanese. You were immediately fined for misspeaking English or combining languages. Mom may have you write lines in the language you messed up, lock you up for hours, or not eat. Daily tutors visited the residence after school. My parents didn't understand the tutors' lessons, but they observed us closely to make sure we were learning. My brother, Leo, 10, had panic attacks before lessons because tutors would inform our parents if we weren't progressing fast enough. Mom and Dad recorded us, sent the movies to distant relatives, and posted them online with the description, "Look at our genius children." Even if they couldn't understand us, people were impressed by our linguistic skills. At 12, my parents gave me 18 months to acquire all 5 languages or attend a European boarding school for intensive language study. They gave me a prison brochure. Uniformed kids spend the first 2 years in silent classrooms without phoning or visiting home. Dad said, "We've already contacted them and they're expecting you unless you prove you can do this." I was exhausted from studying 3 hours after school. I was too tired to study anything but languages, so my grades sank. Leo began to break down and had terrible nightmares. One day, I snapped. I told my Mandarin tutor I was practicing advanced subject by speaking Mandarin gibberish. The tutor looked confused and asked me to repeat. I kept making unnecessary sounds in my pretend language. The teacher told my parents I was saying something unusual when they asked how class went. Web videos taught me a regional accent, and the tutor was illiterate, I informed my parents. I got away with it for 3 weeks. I'd talk trash in class and tell my parents the tutors couldn't test me. Leo joined in. Release was imminent. Parents recruited university linguists who spoke all 5 languages. After hours of testing, they quickly discovered our hoax. My dad went crazy when experts declared we spoke nonsense. He threw our language books one by one. Mom yelled about being ashamed and making them look ridiculous. They grounded us for 6 weeks and quadrupled study time. Before, after, and on weekends, our tutors were available. Maybe 4 hours of sleep and I fell asleep in class. My patience wore gone. Dad threw books at me, and my school counselor observed my arm wounds. Child Protective Services removed me and Leo the day she phoned. A foster family gave me my first chance to speak English whenever I wanted for 6 weeks. Tone and verb conjugation weren't issues. I enjoyed school again after Leo started sleeping through the night. Mom and Dad brought their lawyer and 5 tutors to family court. Our tutors said we were progressing, that multilingual education was healthy for kids. Our linguistics instructors said that while our parents were difficult, we were learning and that removing us from that environment would erase years of work. Claire stated she appreciated her upbringing and that Leo and I were lazy. The judge sent us home. Dad said at the kitchen table that night, "From now on, there is no more English in this house. You speak the 5 languages or you don't speak at all." I was terrified. I kept my hands flat on the kitchen table to avoid shaking. Dad glances between me and Leo, expecting for a mistake or an English remark to prove his case. Leo looks at his lap and pumps his chest too fast, like he's trying not to cry. The deep silence rings my ears. Dad leaves the table and Mom follows without looking at us. Even that feels risky, so I briefly grasp Leo's palm under the table before releasing it. After 15 minutes of inaction, I get up and go to my room. The language timetable is on my door. Friday Russian, Monday French, Tuesday German, Wednesday Mandarin, Thursday Arabic. My childhood routine. Now there's no way out. Since nothing else is going on, I put on pajamas and go to bed at 8:30. I place my palm on the wall to comfort Leo. We'll sort it out as I hear him moving around his room. I don't believe it. The next morning, Mom wakes us at 5:30 instead of 6:30. In the kitchen, new timetables cover every wall. Rooms, kitchen, living, hallway, bathroom, pantry. Those 5 languages gaze at me everywhere. Mom says we're starting in French after looking at the Monday French schedule. She nods and brings me breakfast after I fool my head into speaking French. Mom shouts in French to wake up half-sleeping Leo. He flinches but replies in French. French breakfast and school prep. This feels heavier after years of doing it. I bear boulders of speech. I can finally speak English in school. Relief nearly made me cry in homeroom. Tuesday night leaves me weary and unable to think. German verb conjugations confuse me after 2 hours of homework. The German teacher leaves at 7. My head drops forward, waking me. Again, it happens. I don't wake up until Mom violently shakes my shoulder the third time. I try to focus to her German rants but am brain sluggish. She makes me sit at the table and solve every problem while watching me to keep me awake. I have 4.5 hours to get up after completing at approximately 1 a.m. I faint after dragging myself to bed. When the alarm goes off, I feel like I didn't sleep. Math lesson the next day is so hard to focus on that my teacher asks whether I'm okay. I nod and sit up straighter. After everyone is asleep on Wednesday nights, I slip into the kitchen to get our backpacks by the door. I write in English on a scrap of paper from my notepad, shaking my hands. Together, we'll survive. Seeing English words I chose to write makes my throat clench. I fold the paper as little as possible, place it in Leo's backpack's front pocket, and return to my room before anyone catches me. Thursday is Arabic day, and I'm tired before breakfast. As Mom watches us conjugate Arabic verbs at the table, Leo reaches for his bag pocket. His eyes widen as he removes the tiny folded paper. Mom is looking at her phone, so she doesn't see him reading. Looking at me, Leo nods. So little I almost miss it. His Arabic verb forms return to normal. Only our brief communication in our own tongue feels real in this nightmare. I want to cry and grin yet keep conjugating Arabic verbs and appearing normal. Fatigue makes me dizzy, getting to my locker Friday afternoon at school. Leaning on the wall. Mrs. Gable, my school counselor, catches me around the corner. I want to tell her everything about home when she visits. I want to tell her about the language-only rule, the timetables on every wall, how I only get 4 hours of sleep a night, and how Mom made me stay up until 1 a.m. finishing homework. But I'm worried she'll call CPS again, we'll go to court again, and the judge will send us back, making she stares at me like she knows I'm lying when I say I can't sleep. I nod and say I'm fine when she asks. She says she welcomes conversation at any time. Even if I want to tell her, I thank her and go. That Sunday's review entails practicing all 5 languages in rotation. Fatigue makes me forget languages. Dad asks me a French question, and I start to answer but whisper to Leo in English that I don't recall the term. Dad hears a whisper. He stands up so fast his chair falls over, and I did something wrong. He throws the thick Russian textbook from the table at me before I can move. The corner hits my shoulder hard, hurting my arm. I fall from my chair. I bite my lip to avoid crying since I know he'll be mad. The agony is terrible. Dad is above me yelling in English about breaching the rule. Ironically, him yelling at me in English for speaking English would be funny if I weren't terrified. Mom rants too. Leo cowers in fear. Dad tells me to stay in my room until dinner as I slowly stand up with a sore shoulder. Sitting on my bed upstairs, I inspect my shoulder with my shirt down. A dark bruise is forming where the book hit me. Looking at it changes something. Living this way is impossible. No idea what to do. I must act or break completely. Monday morning finds me in French mode, shoulder hurting under shirt. My science textbook is in my locker when I go to the library for lunch instead of eating. I open and examine the front cover's paper pocket. Writing in English in a notebook feels like breathing after being underwater. I write, Dad threw a book at me yesterday and it left a bruise on my shoulder. I explain the language-only restriction, falling asleep on homework, and Mom staying up until 1 a.m. I write about being too tired to think. Finally, I fold the paper and put it in the textbook cover pocket where no one would find it. I record every time they slap us, don't let us eat, or stay up late. How I'll use it is unknown, but I'll have proof. They'll reject my native language. Writing that eases my powerlessness, like I'm holding on to part of me while they rule. As I start my Mandarin homework in my room the next Wednesday, I hear Leo's door open. His Mandarin tutor Elena is due in 10 minutes. After Leo uses the potty, I hear this stomach-dropping sound. Rapid gasps cause him to cry. I rush into the hallway and find him crying and hyperventilating on the bathroom floor with his back to the wall. I bend alongside him and take his shaking hands. I mutter quietly in English because our parents will hear and kill us. Should breathe with me. In and out for 4 counts, like the foster mom taught us during our 6 weeks in foster care. Despite his efforts, Leo can't stop breathing. He says he can't breathe in English. His ability has expired. In a whisper, I count his breathing exercises. His breathing slows. Clean his red, moist face with tears and snot with toilet paper. I know Elena is coming for his lesson, when Leo panics at the doorbell. I help him stand because of his weak knees and tell him to finish class. Mom lets Elena in as we descend, and Leo trembles. Elena usually organizes at the dining table. Her expression changes when she sees Leo. He has red, swollen eyes and shaky hands. Mom and Dad observe the class in the doorway again. Elena alters her expression at them. She starts Mandarin class by asking Leo simple questions, but she looks anxious. Every few minutes, she sees something she doesn't like at our parents' doorway. Leo answers her questions shakily, trying to concentrate. Elena writes non-Mandarin grammar in her notepad. The class is shortened from an hour to 30. She worries again as she packs and looks at Leo. After she leaves, I wonder if she'll help us instead of shrugging like other adults. I don't hope much because inaction hurts worse. Mom and Dad announce something in the living room that weekend with Leo and me. Dad shows us the router records, all the pages each flatmate accessed, on his laptop. He says, from now on, they're going to check these logs every single night to make sure we're only looking at language learning websites. Mom says they'll also check our phones and tablets before bed to avoid wasting time on non-language learning content. I feel house walls closing. All outside communication stops. No secret emails or help seeking. No connection to anyone relevant. In bed that night, my chest feels restricted from lack of breath. When I breathe faster, I'm having a panic episode like Leo. Slowing my breathing and brain counting decreases panic but not terror. The walls are diminishing constantly, making the house feel jail-like. I notice Elena is odd when she arrives for Mandarin class on Monday morning. Her hands shake as she spreads out her books and papers, so she stares at me instead of lecturing. I'm wearing a short-sleeved shirt in summer, and Dad's book-throwing bruise on my arm is faded to yellow-green but still visible. Elena contemplates it and swallows hard. Again, Mom and Dad watch from the doorway as Elena starts Mandarin classes. After saying they need to check on dinner, Mom and Dad depart the doorway. Elena leans forward and whispers in English whether I'm okay after they depart. Her calm, kind comments make me cry behind my eyes. I want to tell her everything but I'm terrified. Shaking my head, I gaze down at the table. She briefly touches my hand. Her Mandarin returns after Mom and Dad return. However, having someone inquire if I'm okay in English and recognizing me as a genuine person rather than a language study project makes me cry with relief and anguish. I miss lunch Tuesday to go to the library. Although my stomach hurts, I'm not hungry. I log into the school system at an unoccupied computer in the back corner. I create a fake email account my family won't recognize. Type Mrs. Gable's school email address into the recipient field and shake. I make it brief and unclear out of fear someone will read it. I want a private talk because the home language difficulty has gotten worse. I read it 3 times to be sure I didn't say anything too specific that could get me in trouble. Sending deletes the message from the outbox. Delete all browser history from the past hour. I delete cache and cookies for safety. To erase my actions, I wipe the keyboard with my sleeve after signing out. Returning to the cafeteria, I grab an apple from the lunch line with 15 minutes left. Mrs. Gable answers my new email in study hall the next day. She suggests meeting at my study hall on Thursday for a private talk. Reading those phrases loosens my chest after days. But I worry about what to say and how much to tell her. I think about it Wednesday and Thursday morning. I practice expressing the daily language timetable and parental discipline. I try not to exaggerate how awful it is. My statements may get us sent home again like the judge did last time. Dad wants to see my phone at Saturday brunch. Since I failed to remove Mrs. Gable's email, I freeze. Read my school email and his expression sharpens. I quickly grab the phone across the table and pretend to email my science teacher about homework. Dad stares at me, and my heart thumps. He grunts and hands me the phone, instructing me to study languages. I erase my Mrs. Gable emails after he leaves the kitchen. The phone almost fell out of my shaky hands. I confess everything to Mrs. Gable Wednesday night. After my parents check that I'm asleep, I whisper about the timetable, punishments, and fatigue. I misdescribe being hit by a book or going to bed hungry. I want to say anything to convince an adult this isn't normal and we need help. I attend Mrs. Gable's study hall office Thursday afternoons. She closes the door and lets me in. I show her my arm bruises from Dad's grip last week by rolling up my sleeves. I move and pull my shirt to show her the textbook-caused shoulder blade bruise. She wants photos after getting pale. She takes phone shots of each bruise as I nod. I tell her about the language-only rule and how we can't speak English. Dad threw books at us when we made mistakes and Mom made us skip dinner. Mrs. Gable shakily writes everything in a notepad. After I talk, she looks at me and offers support. She promises change this time. I squint to avoid crying, as my chest opens. Mrs. Gable takes a small MP3 player from a drawer before I leave. She says no one has claimed it from the lost and found in over a year. She advises me to turn it on and hide it in my pocket to keep the microphone operating. She believes I can prove my assertions by capturing home life. I practice walking with a recorder in my jeans pocket to hide it. Though afraid, I feel like I'm finally doing something real instead of just surviving. I flunk my science quiz next week because I'm too tired to remember. The words blur when I focus on the page. Teacher emails parents about my declining grades that day. Dad explodes that night. He yells in English that I'm squandering their tutoring money and my future. His English screaming at me defies his language rule, but I don't say anything because it would anger him. He feels I'm worthless if I can't improve in education and languages. Wednesday brings a new mom rule. She provides me and Leo earbuds to wear everywhere except tutoring and sleep. Her loaded language lesson tapes play looped. They sound like a woman reciting French vocabulary terms when I put them in. The voice continues. Words and grammar repeat. French chatter makes it hard to focus on my homework. I hide in the bathroom for 2 minutes to remove the earbuds and hear nothing. On Thursday afternoons, Leo practices Mandarin with Elena in the dining room while I finish schooling in the kitchen. Through the door, I hear them. Leo stops after reciting Chinese. He stares at the wall with half-open mouth, not blinking or moving. Elena approaches and calls him, but he doesn't answer. She looks nervously toward the corridor where Mom and Dad are watching. She writes in her notebook on something other than Chinese grammar. Describes what she saw. When Dad rants at us about our progress reports on Friday, I remember my pocket MP3 recorder. I reach down and hit record through Fabric. Dad gets furious as he threatens to send us to some European boarding school if we don't improve. We'll stay 2 years without phoning or visiting home, he says. As his voice fills the kitchen, I check the recorder in my pocket. While alone, I stop filming after he stops shouting. In the school library the next day, I log into cloud storage. I shake hands when uploading audio. The progress bar moves slowly, so I peek over my shoulder to avoid being noticed. I feel accomplished after uploading the file. My stomach turns the next Wednesday after supper when Mom and Dad call us into the living room, and Dad has this weird excited look. He claims a teacher will stay at the house all night during a special immersion weekend to make sure we exclusively speak our assigned languages. Mom says we'll sleep in shifts to maximize study time, and my throat tightens, since I can't escape even when everyone else is asleep. As Leo shakes his hands on the couch armrest, his face turns almost colorless. Dad insists this will elevate us. Mom thinks this is best, but I worry about losing my bed as a safe place.